Let's start all over.
Well, hello there. Welcome to Firehouse Stories. This is where we tell you behind-the-scenes stories about things that happen within the fire service and to people that work in the fire service. My name is Bob, and this is Doug. And we're career firefighters, as we're our fathers, so we have lots of stories to tell. So today I want to talk about a couple practical jokes, and here's one of the ones that are right up there. We had a guy that was a farrier. He would trim cow hooves and put on horseshoes and stuff like that. Like a blacksmith. Farrier, they're called. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like Ferris from metal, and not furrier, farrier.
He's a cowboy. Go ahead.
He was a cowboy. That was his nickname. But anyways, him and his two girls were supposed to go someplace on a Sunday afternoon, the weekend before, and somehow a fair called him and asked him if he could come and work the fair for that day, and they were going to pay him some good money. So, he took the job and broke the bad news to the family, and of course that put him in the doghouse big time, more than he sort of expected, and not only with the wife but with the two kids. So he said, "Tell you what," he says, "I'll just work this." He says, "And we'll take that money." He says, "And we'll take our dream holiday. We'll spend the weekend in Niagara Falls like we've always talked about."
Yep.
He says, "We'll go up Friday, Saturday, and we'll come home Sunday night." And they thought, "Okay, that's a good trade-off." He said, "Okay, you book it." So they did. So now he goes to work, right? And he's going around the table, coffee table, and he tells his story, and the guys, they break for, doing some work, and as they break and start doing their jobs, the three other guys huddle and they decide, this is what we're going to do. And so pretty soon this other guy, the farrier, gets a phone call. Cowboy gets a phone call.
That sounds better than
okay, than a farrier. It sounds like he sort of skims around the corner of the.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
And there's a guy in the captain's office that's talking to him in the private phone in the other room, and he says, "Yeah, listen," he says, "is this Tom Kent?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, my name is so and so. I'm with Story Auctions," and he says, "I was told you're the guy to call." And Tom says, "Well, what would you like, sir?" And he said, "I'm coming to town on Saturday afternoon, and we have an auction on Sunday, and I've got some cattle, 100 cattle, head of cattle, I'd like the hooves trimmed before they go into auction." Tom said, "Well, no, geez, I'm sorry, sir, I got that day booked." And he said, "No, really," he says, I really would like to get these hooves trimmed," he says, "because, it pays for it in the auction." He says, "Sorry, sir, I can't do it." He says, "And I'll give you another name." He says, "No, somebody told me about you." He said, "I'll tell you what," he said, "what do you charge an animal?" And he said, $10. And he says, I'll give you $20. He said, "I'll give you 25. Tommy goes, "Oh, Jesus." So he says, "Okay, sir, I'll be there." And he hangs up the phone, and he comes back down, and for lunch they're all sitting around the table, and Tommy's just sort of trying to figure out this dilemma now of breaking it to his family that he can't take them to Niagara Falls because he's working again, right? And
money.
And of course, you can see, this went on for the lunch hour as the guys are, giving him advice.
Oh, yeah, good advice.
Really good advice. They wouldn't let him go to the phone, thank God. But then by the time they broke up, they finally told him that there was no job for him. It was just all in the breeze. So that's what it's like around the fire hall. You have to have your wits about you all the time because you never know when you're going to get a hit.
Yeah. Why don't you start my story off, Bob?
Well, Doug was going to tell you a story about a guy that was in charge of buying lottery tickets for T-Ring. So the T-Ring was sort of you meet the start of each shift, and you throw in $5 or $10 or whatever it is to the T-Ring, and it buys all the coffee and all the goodies and stuff like that for the guys. But usually each guy throws in $4 or $5 for lottery tickets. So the guy from the ring takes the tea, goes out and buys the lottery tickets, and then brings them back and put them in the tea ring. And then, of course, you're always working on a shift when that lottery occurs. So you just take them out. The morning paper comes, and you get up and you read and you check them against the paper.
Yeah. So when the guy who was supposed to pick the tickets up in his hometown stopped at the variety store in the town and on his way into work, and he gets the tickets, but he goes to quick pick tickets for the following week, plus the winning numbers of the last night's draw.
So for next week, he bought the same numbers that were won the draw before.
The only thing that's going to be different on the ticket is the date. And who looks at the date? They just look at those numbers. So he goes in and he goes into the kitchen, and the guy who checks the numbers to the paper is sitting over there getting his coffee and getting ready to check the tickets. So he walks in and he slips it under the pile. And he sits over, but his coffee's sitting back watching. And as he's watching, the guy goes, "Oh my God. Boys, everybody here. Oh my God, look at it. Read this, read it. What do you see?" The guys are, what are you talking about? Like, read the numbers. So they're looking at the numbers, comparing the numbers last night's draw. Of course, they're the same, just a different date. It's the following week. The guys don't look at that. All they go, we won $15 million. It was a $15 million winner. We won like that. And they're all celebrating. Well, this guy who got the tickets, he's got to take a squirt. So he goes to take a squirt. He was gone too long. Gone way too long. By the time he got back,
during a critical period.
Oh, geez. So by the time he got back, he'd gone too far. And that's when the all hell broke loose. There he was, sitting there listening to one guy. And he said, "I phoned the kids up. I told them last night I told them we're not going to our swimming pool and we're not going to Florida to Disney World because we can't afford it this year." Well, he said, "I phoned my wife up and I said, tell the kids we're getting the pool and we're going to Disney. We're millionaires." And she hung up, and they're all celebrating. Well, the guy who bought the ticket, he was, it's a prank.
All of a sudden, it's like, whoa.
It's a prank that's gone bad. Like it's bad fast. Just over a pee. While he's gone for a pee, comes back, left it too long. Guys had phoned their wives and told their wives, and some wives were quitting their jobs and everything else. So he's like, how do I break it to them? How do I let them know? Sometimes the prank can go too far.
Well, it went too far for him. It didn't work out too well for him. He had to change stations.
Oh, yeah, they moved him right out. The chief, because the chief's in on that lottery ticket too, that works in that station. And that chief moved him right out. He was gone. He had to, because they're going to lynch him. And he's a super, super nice guy, but they're going to lynch him.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah.
Well, anyways, there's a couple of practical jokes. I can remember another one. I worked with a guy that raised tropical birds, so cockatiels and, just the birds you sold in a pet store, right? Parrots and all that stuff. And he would get seed. So I came in one January and I said to him, "Ma, this is so nice. Our next door neighbor's boy made me a bird feeder for Christmas." And he says, "You want some seed?" And I said, "Well, I got to get some." Yeah. He says, "No," he says, "Never mind." He says, "Don't bother." He says, "I'll bring you some in tomorrow. I'll bring you in 25 pounds. He says, "I get it like for $2 for 25 pounds. I said, "Oh, sure. So he brings me in 25 pounds. I take it and, all winter I'm putting it into my bird feeder. And the way it was the lots were, my lot was here, there was a lot beside me, and a lot beside them. And over on the other side, there was a bunch of trees way over on that third lot. And as April came, the snow started to melt, right? And son of a gun, there was a line of weeds about that high, all the way from my bird feeder to the trees, all the way across. The seed that he gave me wasn't treated. So it wasn't, it evolved or germinated. So, there's just practical jokes that happen all the time, all the time.
Well, explain. What do you mean?
Well, it's just you always had to keep your eye open because
No,
other.
what do you mean germinated?
Well,
Why was there a line going from the feeder to the?
well, because the weeds all grew up, you know, because basically the birds would come to the feeder, then they'd fly to the trees, then they go back to the feeder and fly to the trees, and they drop seeds as they went from one place to the other all the time.
Oh, you bullshitting.
No, that's exactly the truth. And I'll tell you something else. The next
Oh,
year,
here we go.
the next year, that son of a gun, he decides to put in an above ground pool, and he says, and I was taking our garden, our vegetable garden, because that was right at the flight of the birds, and I couldn't keep the weeds to stop from popping up in it. So I was, mowing that under, putting that under, and putting sod on. He says, well, I got some sod for you. I went, oh, but he says, yeah, I'm putting in this round pool, 24 feet. He says, so we're going to, dig up the yard. He says, I can just dig up the sod. We'll just put it in a pile on the side. You can come and pick it up. And I had a pickup truck. So, I spent the morning going from his place with a wheelbarrow, picking it up and putting it, bringing it home. Of course, it wasn't cut square or anything else. It wasn't like a matter of rolling it out, right? It was a matter of fitting them in like a jigsaw puzzle, but that's okay, And I thought, geez, these are a little seedy, but that's what he did was, he
Little what?
seedy. So what he did was, as I was going back and forth with my carts, he was taking his bird seed.
I don't know whether.
Yeah. No, that's the truth. And so again, I had the same sort of thing. Like for the next year, all I had was weeds coming up and weeds coming up and weeds coming up in that area. I couldn't get rid of them. Yeah. But anyways, there's the stories around the fire station.
Did you buy it?
You buy it? Well, that's the truth. It's the truth. So my name's Bob. This is Doug. We post every Friday. And if you like us, please press like. And if you would like to follow us, press follow and we'll come to your mailbox every week, every Friday. Thank you so much. Goodbye.